right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Mississippi Wrestling Network podcast. I'm joined once again by my dear friend Joe Deere. How we doing today, Joe?
Dude, you know what? You already know. It's a pleasure as always, man. Talking about my favorite sport, my favorite person, and we have lots to talk about today.
That's right. So yesterday we covered the Mississippi High School State Duels, and we're going to give you a recap and our thoughts on that. So before we get started, got anything you want to let the fans know?
Well, I mean, it was a tremendous event. I've been watching this sport grow since its inception, and just how quickly those crowds have started to form. I think that was my first takeaway of the day. I walked into that gym and I was like, my goodness,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people here.
And it looked cool too, like with the balconies and people
Yeah.
being able to stand on the balconies. It's almost like you got like a coliseum
Oh, yeah, it was
feel to it.
it was really cool. I mean, and it just shows that the popularity of this sport is growing, and these teams are getting the support they need. And especially, I was very impressed with all the Ocean Springs and Van Cleve shirts I saw in the stands, and the Oak Grove shirts.
That's what I was just fixing to say.
A lot, and I mean, they drove like 5 hours
Yeah.
to come see their guys and gals compete, and I thought that was very admirable, and it speaks volumes of their community.
Yeah, that's what stood out to me the most is, of course, North Pontotoc Trail, they have a big support group, but it's also, 30 minutes
Right? Yeah.
from Ecru. But to see that many Ocean Springs, Van Cleve, Oak Grove, even saw some St. Martin shirts out there. But then, I mean, that whole seating area across from us was just covered in them,
Right.
And that's what really stood out. And then you turn around and there's even more. So, like, their fan bases that traveled, like, that was very impressive. That was, SEC football-esque.
Yeah, I mean, it was very cool. I mean, and so I mean, it really warms my heart. I mean, like I was kind of conversing with some parents and some wrestlers, and even if your team isn't competing, go show support. I mean, it's these kids work so hard, and we're all one large community here. So
Right.
let's all support each other because this. As I tell my club kids and people whoever gives me their ear, I'll always say like this is always just bigger than one wrestler and one coach and one team, and this is a community effort from the north to the south,
Yeah,
and
right.
I got to see that a little bit yesterday.
Yeah, man. I was thoroughly impressed with the turnout, with the support, even like with the support that we saw on the stream. Thank you, every single one of you
Yeah.
who tuned in, who shared, liked it. New followers we got. We sincerely appreciate every single one of you, and it's that kind of support that's going to allow us to continue doing this next year as well. And so again, thank you very much for that. All right, so let's get into it, man. Like before we get into like the
Yeah, let me get
duels
comfortable.
themselves. Yeah. Give us your overall thought on the day.
Um, it's a tough question because I certainly had a lot of thoughts over those 8+ hours. I think my main thought was first the girls' explosion in wrestling. The popularity. I mean, this was the first year we had a girls' dual tournament. Last year was just a north-south kind of thing. Now teams sent as close to full rosters as they could to come compete at this event, and just how intensely these girls wrestle.
Yeah.
And how quickly they get after it, and how much passion they show, and how excited they get for their teammates. I mean, that was really cool to see. I think that was probably my biggest takeaway because I've been kind of getting used to that these past 3 years with the boys. Getting excitement and that energy and that assertiveness. To see like a lot of these, especially these like year one programs like South Pontotoc, that was remarkable to say the least. On the other side of things, I think my general thought was the talent gap between North and South is definitely shrinking quickly to the point where I think it's debatable which region's better at wrestling now. Because the past 3 years, it was obviously Ocean Springs, Van Cleve. The South was very dominant. I mean, but now it seems like between the Lewisburgs and the North Pontotocs and the Oxfords, I mean, we're producing talented kids that can go toe to toe with not just the Southern wrestlers, but any wrestler.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So those are my two really broad thoughts. Girls wrestling has taken off, and it's very exciting and they have the support, enthusiasm, passion, and then just the Northern wrestlers are leveling up, and that's really cool to see. What about you, man?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of right there along that same line of thinking. the especially throughout the season, like seeing the girls like skill sets also progress. As well as their enthusiasm, because you saw it, early on. Some of these first year programs, they went out there and kind of got smoked.
Yeah.
Just for what lack of better words, it's like, man, they got smoked, and that was my biggest concern. Was just like, man, I hope they don't get down on themselves and get frustrated and just kind of throw their hands up with it. And you saw that. Like I said, a prime example is that South Pontotoc team,
Yes.
first year team, and they come out and Mooneyham, I can't remember her first name, but Miss Mooneyham got a huge pin win against Van Cleve, or was it Ocean Springs? It was one of the big teams that they weren't really even supposed to win a match against. On
Oh, yeah,
paper, on
yeah.
paper. But I said it as soon as that match started. I'm like, hey, like, don't count this girl out, man. Like, she's a scrapper, and sure enough, she goes out there and gets a freaking pin.
Oh yeah, I mean, just to keep giving praise to South Pontotoc, like you're saying, just same with like the boys, like they were always a underdog kind of black horse team. I think it's fair to say South Pontotoc girls was that
Yeah.
going into it, and they battled. And honestly, if they had a full roster with the same consistency that the girls that they had, they might have been in a placing match.
Yeah.
Like I said, I want to say it was Ocean Springs. It was one of those where it's just like, well, if they get one, that'd be great. I think
Yeah.
they got four.
Right.
Out of 7 matches, I believe.
Yeah.
And so it's like that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Exactly.
And like what you're saying is, we were there first match of South Pontotoc girls season, and they looked just like a first year team.
Yeah.
But you can definitely tell that they have progressed and they have developed over the season, and that compliments to their coach and compliments to what South Pontotoc is doing.
Yeah. Right on. And like I said, with the boys, my first real dive into the high school wrestling thing was at the state tournament last year, and I did see that gap between the North and the South. It's like that was my first time getting a look at the South wrestlers, but I was like, man, like there's a couple guys from the North, like individuals that I know that can hang, and beat these guys, but as far as like a team, like there's still a lot of ground to cover. And that was just me as an outsider looking in. But then as this season's progressed and I've gotten to see some of these South teams come up, especially like the best team of the South come up, really it was a strategy issue, man. Like they kind of got out, it was outpointed, but it's because like that Lewisburg team, you had wrestlers who realized they were down, were probably going to lose, but they never wilted to give up the pin or the major. It's like they kept the points tight, and that was huge in that victory over Van Cleve.
Which I tell you what, we don't not like I think North Pontotoc and Lewisburg are probably one of the few teams that have a full roster, and I think Corinth and Pontotoc City do, but they're first year teams. So it's of the veteran teams, I think those two are the only ones that have full rosters, and Van Cleve had a full roster. So that was really cool to see. Like being from Iowa, and wrestling in college, I've seen a lot of wrestling duels in my life, and that one, it looked like a real duel. It was suspenseful, it was intense, a lot of, like you're saying, strategy. Which we'll dive deeper in this when we dedicate time to talk about that duel. But that was movie script, movie script ending.
Exactly.
Which we'll unpack that here in a minute. But in terms of what you want to start from, like the semifinals, or like where you want to start at?
Yeah. Well, we can talk about a couple of the first matchups of the day, because I thought there was a couple of them that were interesting, and then we'll kind of jump to the semifinals. But on the girls' side, I thought the Oak Grove Oxford being the very first matchup, I was like, wow, man, this is a kind of a bad draw for both teams. Like this is going to be tough to see who pulls this one out, and it kind of played out, exactly like that. Oak Grove ended up taking the team win in that one, but there was some girls that they showed up and they performed, and there was some from Oak Grove that showed up and picked up some wins that I was kind of surprised by, and which I knew that was a possibility.
Yeah.
Right, because I've gotten to get a look at the Oak Grove girls team at that wrestling rodeo in Pontotoc, and that's kind of where Miss Addison Wilson came on my radar.
Hmm.
But then you had a girl from Oak Grove who beat Nina Weinstein
Hmm.
in there as well, and just kind of watching them throughout the day, I was like, man, like these girls, like not all of them are gonna bring that intensity and that explosiveness, but they're all bringing some pretty good technique. And I knew that was going to be problems because Oxford's kind of matched up the same way.
Yeah.
They've got some girls that, their game is relying on that intensity and, just that pressure of, smash and pass kind of, and get to the pin. But then you also have some girls that have some really high level technique on that team. And so that right there to me, like just popped off that. And then the North Pontotoc boys, Picayune boys, as a first matchup, I was kind of like, man, it could be a bad draw for either team right there.
Right. I mean, and I complained about that a number of times in the live stream about the seating issue. I really thought North Pontotoc was the true number two, and going up against the second ranked team in the South first round, I thought that was going to be rough. But I mean, North Pontotoc handled it pretty decisively. I mean, I don't like if you can pull up the team score. I don't even think it was remotely close.
Yeah, we'll get it pulled up right here. Let's see. There's North Pontotoc.
I mean, and
Here it
kind of what
is.
you're talking about, like a big annoyance. And again, I complained on the live stream about this. Like it was always annoying to me. It's like we don't see the South until state, and so it's not quite state, but I'm still agitated that like okay, dual state's the first time I'm seeing most of these Southern teams, and so like like if history informed my thinking, it was the South is going to be dominant, especially. Picayune hit the scene last year, and they had some pretty impressive guys like Justin Pierce at 138. Um, but this year, they've clearly leveled up. I mean, they climbed to the second ranked team in the South. And so I was really, straight up, I was nervous. I was
Yeah.
like, can North Pontotoc handle this team? And they did.
Yeah, and
They-
but then like kind of like your theory, of the the progression that Picayune has made from
Mhm.
last year to this year, you kind of saw that play out throughout the day. As they really gave a lot of people problems throughout the day,
Oh, for
like no
sure.
matter who they matched up against.
And I don't want to just be so flippant by saying North Pontotoc handled it. I mean, Picayune, I mean, they battled back to that third and fourth place match. They have some studs on that roster and that lineup, which we'll name drop a few here in a second. But they were looking solid,
Yeah, absolutely.
and they're a second year team, and so I mean, I can only imagine that the future is looking very bright for them. I know they're going to keep climbing the rankings, keep gathering some accolades, and I'm sure they're going to start being one of those teams down in the South that's going to give other teams headaches.
That's right. So North Pontotoc ended up taking that team duel 44-26, right there. So your first match was at 132 pounds. You had Levi Gooch over Daniel De Leon by pin at 47 seconds.
Now in that duel, the marquee matchup that I was looking for mostly in that duel was the 150 match. It was a
Okay.
ranked match between
Okay, yeah, Luke Hale versus Ethan Perkins.
yes, because I believe Perkins is ranked fourth in the state right now. Luke's ranked number one, and you never know because like I hate to bring up old baggage, but Luke had a heartbreaker in the semis last year, and then
Yeah.
he battled back for that third and fourth place, and that's when he wrestled that Justin Pierce kid. And I thought, well, Luke's got this. I mean, I coach him. I know what he's capable of doing. I know he's got this. And then Justin Pierce just surprised all of us. He's a strong kid, ripped out a front headlock and pinned him. And I was like, are we gonna have a repeat of that? We're
Yeah.
gonna run into a Picayune boy that we're gonna underestimate. But no, I mean, Luke did what he does. He stuck to what he's good at, and I think he handled that match from start to finish. And if it's any indication of how state's gonna play out, I mean, I think Luke has a good shot to make it to the finals and probably win state this year.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. Like a lot of the biggest difference that I've seen in Luke from last year and Luke from this year is his approach to the matches. Like he just goes out there with that assassin mentality. He knows he's going for the finish, and it seems like that's brought more of that intensity out of him, and where like his skill set starts to shine when he wrestles that way. If he starts wrestling a little more conservative, he tends to not pull off some of the moves that you'll see him hit whenever he's just out there in that flow state, just going.
He lets it fly, and it's
Yeah.
great. And in fact, I mean, I would probably argue that it's that pace that he sets that kids just can't keep up with.
Yep.
But anyway, enough about him. I mean, there's some other really good matches. I know Eli Sheffield had a good match. Will Banks had a good match. Gooch, obviously. Warren had a good match. Big Country always has. He's always in a battle, and I'm pretty sure he pulled that one off. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, so everyone who again, I don't want to. I'm sure the listeners at home want to hear like really in depth analysis, but really at the end of the day, it's the people who I expected to win and perform well did, and the matches. And so like I really wasn't too surprised by very much. I mean, there's a couple surprise upsets, but for the most part, things kind of played out the way I expected them to. I will say this on the SIP podcast, Warren and Knox spoke very highly of Picayune's 165. Darian, what's his last name?
They have Grayson Strickland
Grayson Strickland.
as their 165, is who wrestled Mike Wilbanks. And Mike Wilbanks pulled that one out in a 14-12 decision.
Oh, well, he must have not wrestled that duel. But I remember seeing him competing against Tupelo. I think he's the one who wrestled Clay Crane, if I'm not mistaken. We'll probably have to fact check ourselves later. But
oh, no, Grayson Strickland over Mike Wilbanks in a 14-12 decision.
Oh, that's upsetting.
So Grayson Strickland won that one. That's the match that I was kind of thinking about that happened. Remember, I think that's the one where it looked like Mike, he had it, and then he kind of got tired right there, and he gave up the 3 points at the end.
Yeah.
He was up 14-13.
Right.
And he gave up, or he was up, what is it? He was up like 12-11, and ended up
Yeah, like
giving
a
up
last
the 3
second
point.
thing.
Yeah. If I'm recalling correctly, but we watched a lot of wrestling. So
Yeah, I know.
we'll see.
Like I said, it was 8+ hours of wrestling, so it all
Yeah.
definitely blurs a little bit. And, we've been watching a lot of matches this year.
Yeah. Okay, so let's stick with the boys here, and let's see. Let's get to the semifinals. That was Picayune Tupelo, right? Was third and fourth.
No, third and fourth is Picayune Oxford.
Picayune Oxford.
So that was
that's
like the consolation semis.
I'm
I
telling you,
believe.
man, it's the singlets. It gets
Yeah,
me.
I
It gets me
know.
every
I
night.
know.
In my mind, I remember seeing it happen.
Blue and yellow, they run together.
Okay, let's see. Picayune Oxford. Okay.
So that was the third and fourth place match, which, pause real quick, like Oxford getting there to that third and fourth place match I think that was very impressive.
Yeah.
Huge props to Coach Conrad and his coaching staff. For the second year of the row, they have been kind of, I don't want to call them an underdog team, but it's kind of a team you kind of overlook, and it's like, okay, well, they're the fourth seed, and they're not that spectacular or whatever, but they showed up. They put in work. They won the matches they needed to win. They pulled an upset in a few matches to get to that third and fourth place match, and they pulled it out again. They got third.
And I mean, speaking of one of, I don't know if you would even consider an upset on paper or not, because I'm not looking at each wrestler's individual record on the season, but Gavin Shaner over Daniel De Leon.
Oh, that was
winning by tech fault. Gavin hadn't had the best day that day, but when they're there and they're wrestling for third place, he goes out and gets a tech fall for his team.
right, because Oxford started the day off with Van Cleve, and I don't mean it just is what it is. I mean, they got handled pretty resoundly.
Yeah.
Aside from the huge upset by Jaden Gibson beating one of the Carroll boys, it was kind of one-sided.
Yeah.
But to take that kind of outcome and then to battle all the way back for that third and fourth place match, and then to get that third place finish for Gavin Shaner to take 2 hard lumps to get to that third and fourth place match, to get a tech fall, to get 5 points for his team. I mean, that's a really good story to tell, and certainly one that I'm sure he'll be telling.
Yeah, as you should, young man. As you should.
And one of my biggest takeaways from that third and fourth place match, I mean, again, it's a testament to the compliments that I was giving Oxford during the live stream as well as Lewisburg, is that clearly they have a culture of consistency. They're clearly training the way they need to train. They're training probably as frequently as you can. I know I was talking to one of the Oxford parents, and they said that during winter break, they were in there every day except Christmas Eve and Christmas. So it's like that's that kind of culture you need to stay in shape and to take on that second half of the season with some strength and some tenacity. And it showed. Where, let's say, teams that don't have that culture, they were looking a little gassed, a little fatigued. Oxford and Lewisburg, they looked strong, and they looked like they wanted to be there. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But anyway, what I really wanted to get at is that, as we stated, Picayune's the second-ranked team in the South. Oxford's the fourth-ranked team. And, I mean, what was that final team score?
Final team score was 47-28 Oxford.
and that's with Oxford giving up, I think, how many forfeits? Like 2 forfeits.
Well, they had it was a double forfeit at 144.
Oh, okay.
Um, there's 1, 2, 3. I think it might have been just those 4 forfeits.
Oxford gave up 4 forfeits.
Hmm.
So that's where they're picking out all their points. So they won every match. Is that what you're telling me?
Almost.
My goodness. So that even amplifies my point is that with that talent gap shrinking, we have the ranked team in the North resoundingly taking out the second ranked team in the South. I mean, again, that's just a testament to kind of how wrestling in the North region is kind of developing. And as someone who lives in the North half of Mississippi, I think that's really cool to see, especially I think the South was getting a little too comfortable in this mindset that they're the dominant power, that they're the best wrestling region of the state, and certainly they let that opinion be known on social media and interpersonal interactions that we're the best, we're here. Well, the North, we're not taking those statements laying down, and we're training too, we're working hard, and like I said, it shows.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And said you saw that throughout the day, right? Especially I think even Mark Sudduth picked up a win over that Van Cleve team.
Mm-hmm.
I believe so. So it's Oxford, with Mark, Jaden, another one that's really consistent, Christopher Perez.
Yeah. Oh, he impressed me a lot.
Like all
yesterday.
day long, man. Like, he was going out there icing the veins and just giving dudes the business all day long. And but that's kind of been the motto every time I've seen him step on the mat this year. It's like, he just goes out there and he's fixing to wrestle hard. And if you beat him, you beat him, but you better pack your lunch because he's coming. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like you see those guys and like they don't shy away from the title of this school you go to and this is where you placed last year and this is where you placed. It's like they don't let any of that get to them. It's like, well, you got to do it right now, and that's kind of the mindset that I've seen Oxford boys wrestle with all year, and that's why they take that big lump to start the day and then they end up third. So to the like just behind the team that gave them that lump. It's like Van
Right.
Cleve gets 2, Lewisburg 1, and then there's Oxford sitting right behind them. It's like
Right.
and that's kind of probably one of those bad matchup kind of things that we talked about, like the Oxford girls versus Oak Grove girls.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you got to bring it, and they just kind of with the 4 forfeits and then dropping the matches. It's like, okay, yeah, it's like you're probably gonna lose to Van Cleve if you're forfeiting 4
Right,
times. You know what I mean? Like that's gonna happen, but. That's Oxford's just been one of those teams, from last year even to this year, that just, they ain't gonna go away.
No,
Not gonna go away.
Right. So again, just huge props to Coach Conrad and his staff, and shout out to what's that name, Darian Chaplin,
Yep.
out of Picayune. He's ranked number 1 at 165 right now. Knox and Warren talked about him a lot on their podcast, so I was very curious to see how he's going to look. He impressed. Absolutely. He definitely looks like he deserves the number 1 ranking. And unfortunately, he and Parker Bradley didn't get to wrestle because Picayune didn't face Lewisburg at all. So I will be curious to see how they match up, but I definitely think he's a force to be reckoned with.
Man, I'll tell you, I'm trying to remember which kid for Picayune it was. I want to say maybe this Tony Brewer kid. I believe that maybe who it was. It's either 132.
Are you talking about the kid with the braids?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that him?
I don't know.
Man, hey, that kid, like the one with the braids, like, dude, every time he stepped out there, it's like, man, he looked like he was about to get into a bar fight. Like, as soon as the ref said go, he stepped forward, boom, he's working, he's clubbing for that, collar tie and stuff. And like, he just, man, I just thoroughly enjoyed watching him wrestle throughout the day.
Right. I mean, yeah, I'll echo that. I mean, it's just fun to see kids go out there and fight. Like, I want to echo what you're saying about how, kids go out there, they don't care. Oh, cool, we got state runner-ups, state champion. We're going to scrap, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a wrestler, you're a wrestler. That's all that matters right now. That whistle's going to blow. We're going to go toe-to-toe, and let's make it happen. And that's the mentality that where you see those big upsets and where you
Yep.
see those Cinderella stories kind of happen is where you just and then it's also where you see you refer to it as mental quicksand, where it's like you start beating yourself, or you have this mental battle before you even step on the mat, where it's like, oh, I gotta beat this kid. Oh gosh, he's so talented, or oh, the team scores kind of not in our favor, and you start putting this pressure on
Yep.
yourself. Once you get that off your shoulders, and it's like I'm just gonna go out there and attack this dude and try and score as many points as possible. Everything else is just gonna fall into place.
That's right. That's right, man. Just bring your best skills and go give it to them.
Right.
Just go give it to them. Like, hey, look, if you're gonna lose, man, you're gonna lose regardless. But
Right.
like, at least lose throwing your best stuff at them.
Mhm.
Like that's how I've always approached anything. It's like, hey, it may not work out, but I mean, I'm gonna do my best. Regardless, whether it be fighting, wrestling, life, whatever. It's like, well, it may not work out, but I'm gonna be in there. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Pull up the Tupelo Picayune scores real quick, because we got to talk about Tupelo a little bit.
Tupelo Picayune. Okay.
So I know Picayune kind of ran away with this one, right?
48-30.
That's pretty close. I mean, was there a fair amount of?
Let's see. So, first to start out the day, Porter Vaughn got the win by forfeit. Then you had Ethan Perkins over Javari Reed. That was a good one. That was a good match. He ended up getting the fall over Javari Reed, but that was a pretty good match. Then you had Yamin Aodi over Grayson Strickland by fall. Then you had Darian Chaplin over Clay Crane by fall.
That's the match that woke me up to Darian Chaplin, because I mean, we've talked about Clay a number of times and what he's capable of doing and his abilities, and he did not have an answer for Darian Chaplin. I saw them shake hands. I looked away to look at some girls. I come back. Clay's walking off the mat. The score says 13 to something or another, and then it's in the second period, so someone got pinned, and I had to go up to the ref like, what happened? And they said Clay got pinned, and I was like, whoa. So he was losing by a major, and then that shows a lot to his ability.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I mean, again, I didn't watch. Again, it must have happened so fast. I just was watching this girls' match and looked back and it was over. But to get that score, I'm guessing that he had to beat him on his feet and on the mat. And so Clay's best position's on his feet, and to out wrestle him on neutral like that, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean that speaks volumes to Darian Chaplin. Champlin? Is that how you say it? I see he's got an M and not a.
Who knows? Someone's gonna tell us.
Yeah, I'm sure. Let us know in the comments.
But with that said, I mean, Clay also had a really good day. I mean, he had two. I was skeptical when I saw him bump up to 160, which he's been doing. I mean, he bumped up to Russell Parker Bradley last week, and then he did it to Russell Brandon Myhan. He bumped up, but it was kind of weird to see him bump up again. But he won his first two matches of the day. He just dropped this last one, and I hope he'd be dropping back down to 57 for North Half. But hey, I'm not his coach. I don't talk to Clay like that. But at the same time, I mean, regardless, I mean, he looked well at 65, but I think he's number one at 57, and so I hope he kind of stays there.
Him and Eli Sheffield wrestled at 57, right?
Yeah. They wrestled at the Wave Invitational, and that might have been 65, but I think they both have dropped down since. But again, so many matches, it all kind of blurs together.
Yeah, man, it does.
But in sticking with Tupelo, I mean, again, we can't bring up Tupelo without bringing up Caden Hill.
That's what I was just fixing to go up. I was like, you had Caden Hill over Michael Williams by fall.
That dude just continues to impress me immensely. I mean, what else is there to say? I mean, I talked a lot about him at the Black Horse and our other recap videos. I mean, he's just relentless, man. I mean,
right. And he's not the biggest heavyweight in terms of like he's not your 6'5",
right.
300-pound guy. Like he's not that. But if you look at that young man, you're like, oh my God, like I don't want him hitting me.
No. And
like getting hit with an S10.
Yeah, and for like a first-year wrestler, just the way he moves, the leverage that he uses, his positioning. I mean, he's just a natural at this sport, and I think as his techniques develop, I mean, he could.
And he gets low, man.
He does.
He gets low, and he'll blast you like that. I think that's the biggest thing that separates him with some of these other heavyweights is like you'll see, a lot of these other heavyweights, man. It's heavy collar ties, heavy hand fighting, a lot of up
Right. He
top
doesn't even
wrestling.
tie up, does he?
No, no. If you try to tie up with him, he's just gonna bump and go, bump and go.
And we were talking about this the other day where it's like he just wrestles without fear. I think a
Yeah,
lot of these bigger boys, the 215s and the heavyweights, they're like, well, if I don't get this shot perfectly, I'm going to have this body under me. This kid wrestles like he doesn't care.
yeah.
Sprawl, go ahead. I'm still going to keep driving through you.
Yeah, I mean, because I bet he doesn't.
Right. And against when Tupelo wrestled, I believe Van Cleve, right? They wrestled that Van Cleve's heavyweight, who's a big boy
Yeah,
himself.
really
and
big.
I was going to be curious, like he's giving up like 4 inches of height. Like what's going to happen here? And he just blew right through him.
Yeah, and
You
it
know,
looked like he
and
probably
so
gave up 40 pounds too.
and so I'm excited to see the Hunter Button, Caden Hill showdown at North Half. I imagine they're going to be the 1 and 2 seeds respectively, and you know, like Hunter Button's a monster. He likes to tie up and rip people's heads off, but can Caden Hill drop low and drive through him? Like, it's going to be interesting to see, and
Yeah.
that's a match I'm definitely looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, man, and and that's kind of like where there's been a couple opportunities this year where I thought, oh man, we might get to see this matchup, and then something happens, like I think it was even like at the Wave Invitational, it's like French Camp like had like some kind of school function or
Right.
something, like there was a time limit, like no, well by this time, like no matter where we're at in the tournament, like we got to roll, and it's like, well, golly, man, but it happens, man.
Hey,
You can't control what happens with the school.
Right.
All right, so let's get on to the boys finals.
Was there anything else we want to talk about the girls?
Or do you want to go to the girls semis?
Yeah, I mean,
Let's do that.
with the girls, what's weird is like once we got to the semifinals matches, these duels were kind of like shootouts where one girl would get a pin, then it'd be responded with a pin, and we had a lot of ties. I think we had a tie in the semis and we had a tie in the finals, and it came down to criteria, right? No, actually, the finals it was by team points, but I think both semifinals matches, or at least one of them, certainly was by criteria, or was it the third and fourth place match? Regardless, there's a lot of pins, is all I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Which is a testament to these girls like getting after it, being aggressive, slamming girls down, throwing in deep halves, ripping faces off of cross faces, just really kind of imposing will and being in a scrap that resulted in those pins. And I think like I said, we already talked about Wilson from Oak Grove, who was very impressive. EJ Scott, who ended up beating Wilson during the North Pontotoc Oak Grove match. You talked about intangibles in our previous discussions. I think EJ Scott's intangibles really paid off for her in that
Yeah.
match. There's some, I think, 235 pounders from Oak Grove and Oxford, respectively. I think they were very impressive, just forces of nature. And then there's another girl, Tomley from Van Cleve. She responded to all adversity with a big old smile on her face. She would, get snapped or she would get bullied a little bit by Miss Underwood, who's a force of nature herself.
Yeah.
And she just had a big old smile on her face, giving thumbs up to her coaches. Like, it's all good. I'm loving this. This is where I want to be. This is great.
Well, it was like she finally found somebody who's going to give her a scrap she's been looking for. And then
Yeah.
whenever they first tied up, and she ended up, getting the better of it. But I mean, they were roughhousing each other. And like, soon as they separated for the reset, she looked over at her coach. She was like, "Oh yeah, it's go time."
Yeah.
Like this is like she's thriving in this situation, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's it was really something to watch, and we discussed it with Coach Sutherland a little bit about what it's like to coach Tomley, and he had some fun words to say about her. I mean, she's a fighter, and this is definitely the sport for her. And I do look forward to seeing her at state as well. I mean, I think we mentioned this during the stream where it's like a lot of names. We were not familiar with the South because we don't go down to the South. It's too far.
Yeah.
But we know a lot of names now.
Destiny Tomley.
We know names now. We know faces. We know who to look for, and she's certainly one of those.
Absolutely.
And then just
And sticking on that Van Cleve team, Melanie Mitzi. She
yes.
stood out as well. Like, hey, she looked good out there, man. Like, she had some good technique. Like, she was scrappy as the day is long. Like,
yeah, I think that was my big takeaway from Mitzi's. Every time I looked over there and I saw her name on the board, every time I'd look back, someone be in a head crate or like a headlock or in a shot or just a fight off the back. I mean, she intense.
Yeah.
Easily. I mean,
Yep.
which you love, like I said, you love to see it. You can probably describe a lot of girls with those adjectives, but she embodies those certainly.
Well, the thing that always stands out to me, particularly with the girls, so far, is you have basically three categories.
Hmm.
You have intense wrestlers.
Yeah.
You have the technical wrestlers, and then there's a couple of them sprinkled in there that do both.
Yeah.
And like those are the ones that it's like it really stands out when you can see that intensity, but then they hit, just a super clean technique, and then they just continue to grind and be mean and be rough, and it's just, but they're going about it just with a technical precision and just taking down their opponents, and that's what I think is impressive.
Which is what's really cool is that you can teach technique, but you can't really teach intensity. I mean, you can try your best, but some kids have it, some kids don't.
Right.
And so I'm thinking of Miss Wilson from Oak Grove, where it's like, she's clearly a fighter. She stays in good position, all this stuff. But as I kind of watched her throughout the day, I noticed that her technique is a little lacking. And, especially in that Scott match where it's like, okay, you're kind of taking it to the wrong angle, or you're not stepping up with your outside leg to drive. And so that kind of messed her up a little bit on a couple of her shots. And so it's like, if you just tweak that technique, that, she'll probably become untouchable.
And with stuff like that, it's like, I always kind of look at it, from both ways. It's like very much so, like what you're referring to is like being able to make those adjustments on the spot.
Yeah.
And it's like
super important.
And then going back into the intangibles, it's like, all right, well, what other girl in that weight class in the whole state is as tall and long as EJ?
Right.
And because that's essentially what was giving her the most problems is she was getting in on the shots. Well, first off, like EJ was backing up.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so now she has extra ground she's got to control to close. Right,
Right.
She's getting in on the shots, and then as she's popping up, where normally when she gets to the top of that takedown, she can kind of scoop and go with it. Well, EJ's toes were still
Right.
touching the mat, and so when she went to hit that pull, like there was friction on the mat, and she wasn't getting those legs sucked up underneath her, and like that's where a lot of that frustration was coming in. But that's where it's kind of like what you were referring to is okay. Recognize what's happening here, and when you hit that next shot, step out and drive across.
Right.
Like don't let that link.
Yeah, because Scott would just drape over her and effectively just kind of cover her like a blanket.
Yep.
And then she would get those 3 points. And it was an interesting match to watch. Let me just say that. But other than that, I mean, like we said at the start of the podcast, I mean, the girls really impressed me, and that. Especially, both of our predictions for the finals were completely off base. I even predicted, so for the finals, for the girls, we both said St. Martin. I thought it was going to be close because what I've been hearing down south is that it's been close battles, but it was your Ocean Spring Greyhounds
and it wasn't even close.
It was like 42 to 24, something like that. And so it's like, they won most of the matches, and they won most of them by pin.
Yeah, like decisively.
Right, and there's one girl in particular who really stood out for me at Ocean Springs. It's Miss Molander. I know her brother won state last year, and if I have my information correctly, I believe her family is a transplant from Kansas, and so they have a nice. So I presume that they have a nice wrestling background, and you want to talk about girls or athletes that have both that intensity and that technique. I mean, yeah, she does it. She has it.
She stood out to me from her very first match.
Right.
Whenever she walked out on the mat, because it was Ocean Springs versus South Pontotoc, and she was the first matchup. And when she walked out there, I'm like, this girl looks like a wrestler.
Right. Which, like I said, something like advanced wrestlers, there's a way in they walk.
Yeah.
The way they walk, the way they keep those shoulders back, the look on their face.
Yep. Just her frame, like the way she was built, you could tell it's like, man, like this girl's been wrestling. Like,
right.
Just the way that, like you said, the way she walked out there, but like as soon as like she went to get in her stance, it's like, oh no. Oh no. This is fixing to go bad.
And from St. Martin, Promise. And I forgot her last name, but it's one that's a tongue twister, I believe. A little bit of a tongue twister, that last name. But Promise, another transplant from Virginia, 2-time state champ in Mississippi, going for her 3rd title this year.
In different weight classes.
Sweet girl, we did a bit of an interview during the live stream, and so she's very nice. Heck of a handshake.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, but she looked just like we talked about with Molander, she looked like she's been there before, and you can definitely tell she has some experience. And she has aspirations to wrestle in college, and I believe it, and I hope she does, and I hope she has immense success. I hope she gets this third title, and because it was a lot of fun watching her wrestle, and and it's also really easy, just like I talk about Clay Crane. It's really easy to cheer for kids that aren't yours to when they're nice,
Yeah.
when they're sweet, when they're just good kids all around. Like
Right.
they're fun to watch wrestling, but off the mat, they're just they're humble, they're polite, and so she checks all those boxes. But we got to bring, not to embarrass her, but what really got our attention was the mean mug.
Oh man, that's I was just fixing to say that, dude.
Yeah, talk about
was,
that for a second.
That was my favorite part. Was when she walked out on the mat. There was a lot of people in the comments that had been saying, let's go Promise. So I was kind of already anticipating her wrestling, and then just when she stepped on that mat. Like you could tell, she was kind of, getting locked in over on the side. But when she stepped on that mat, I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I want to see her and Aiden Pruitt do the mean mug, because like, they have the best mean mugs in the game for sure. And just like, even when she won, it was just like stone face, like, oh, I wasn't finished yet, kind of thing. And I was like, man, I love this, because it's mental warfare.
Right.
It is like if you step across from somebody and they look like they don't mean business, but then they grab a hold to you and you find out they mean business, like, all right, here we go.
And so I want to round that off, because the only other comment I have is just very impressed with Ocean Springs. They resoundingly won their first team title, first girls team title ever, and they certainly picked up where the boys left off from last year, and that was nice to see. And just congratulations, ladies. And as I'll tell everyone else, the job's not done. There's still South and North half, and then individual state. And something I talked about on the live stream that I want to bring back up is, when North Pontotoc wrestled, they have a returning state champion in their lineup, Ashley, and when we say state champ this, state champ that, we have to understand that the state tournament from the previous year is not what the state tournament's going to look like this year. Brackets are expanding, more participation is growing, the talent level is increasing, and so, don't kind of what we were talking about earlier is like, don't give the state champion title more credit than it deserves.
Right.
I mean, think of it this way: when we started wrestling, there was 9 teams, and so when you were a state champion, you only had to beat 2 or 3 guys. Now you have to beat 4. Now you have to beat 5. Now this year is going to be the first year where in the North half the schools aren't going to send a guy to the state tournament, because 16 teams, top 8 go to state, half of them aren't going to go. So the level of competitiveness in our state tournament is exponentially growing.
Yeah.
And so, or like, for example, I'm sorry, buddy, to bring you into this, but Eli Carlisle, I mean, he was a 2-time state champion going for his 3rd, and he ran into a buzzsaw called Brandon Myhan, and he got resoundingly beat at the North Half Finals. And so it just goes to show that the level of difficulty is increasing.
Right.
And so again, I just want to highlight, hey, they may have won state, they may have got 3rd place, 2nd place, whatever. Hey, it's a new year. There's new guys. And not to mention, there's also guys who work their butts off in the off season or during season that are putting in those extra reps that are a force to be reckoned with this year.
That's right. That's right. And man, on that topic, before we move on from this, St. Martin and Ocean Springs, I'll tell you, there was 2 wrestlers again for St. Martin that stood out to me throughout the day. Both of them's name were Green, Adriana Green and Elijah Green.
Yeah, thank you.
Every time I looked over there and I saw that name Green on the screen, you saw these girls out there putting on a show. Mm-hmm. Like it was fun to watch. The technique that they brought. Again, they're a couple that they combine the intensity with the skill, and every time they stepped on the mat, they were really fun to watch yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So that's the girls' final. You know, it was a mixed bag going through there. But Ocean Springs, they started out hot, 3 pins in a row. Then St. Martin answered back with 3 pins of their own, and then it kind of went 2-1, 2-1, and Ocean Springs pulls it out, man, and first ever, you know, team state champions. Congratulations, ladies.
Oh, and yeah, of course, congratulations again. You guys deserve all the accolades, and definitely, flex on the boys. Let them know that hey, it's your turn now. Because I guess we got to talk about we didn't talk about the boys, Ocean Springs. You know, I don't know how to put this delicately, so I'll use the words of a parent who I saw on Facebook, who said it was a disappointing outcome this year for Ocean Springs, and I hate to say it, but it's weird to see a team that was stacked year in year out. And I saw at the beginning of the year they published their team photo where it looked like there's 30 to 60 kids. To only bring 7 or so kids to the state duels, and did not even have. It was few enough to where they couldn't win a duel.
Yeah.
And it's like, what happened? You win state 3 years in a row, and then they kind of just imploded. And that was very sad to see. And based on these comments that I saw on social media, it just seems like they're dealing with the same thing. It actually kind of humanized them a little bit because they're dealing with the same problems we are up here, where it's like, people are still kind of scratching their head at wrestling. Kids aren't committing to this culture of wrestling. Parents are kind of skeptical. We got injuries, we got grades. And so it kind of, I hate to say it, made me feel a little bit more reassured and validated in what we're experiencing up here with, like I said, the culture issues, the consistency issues, and things like that. But I hate to see it in a program like Ocean Springs, where it's like I said, they've been kind of the standard since we began wrestling. I know Coach Snow, who who last year was the previous season, he spent a decade building it, and it's really tragic kind of see the state that it's in, and I really hope that kind of turns around quickly. But they had 2 really impressive wrestlers that I have to name drop: Heisman Murphy and Garner Taylor. Heisman and Garner are 2 names that I've been hearing consistently leading up to the dual state tournament, and they met expectations. I mean, Heisman, I think he's a junior high kid, I think 8th grade, and he wrestled very well, and he's clearly a kid that's going to be deadly as he develops. And then Garner, I mean, like I said, I heard about him over this past summer at the Deep South Duels, and I think I only saw him wrestle 1 match, but that's all it took for me to say, oh, this kid knows how to wrestle, and he deserves that #1 ranking. I mean, so I just want to give a shout out to those guys, and my condolences to Ocean Springs, and I hope to see you guys in full strength come next year. I know you have a good club down there, and Van Cleve's just down the road, so I'm hoping that you can generate the interest in the off season, or the kids that are injured, they can get healthy and they can bounce back into the lineup. So I just want to throw that out there before we talk about.
We got to get to these finals.
Yeah, we got to talk about the finals.
Get to the finals. All right, let's get to it. Got Van Cleve and Lewisburg. Lewisburg takes the win.
Who did we say was going to win that duel before it started?
Me and you both said Van Cleve.
And I'll go even a step further. I said Lewisburg would maybe win 4 matches out of the 14. I just want to give a heartfelt apology to Lewisburg as a doubter. I've rallied against doubters in all of our conversations.
Yeah.
And I was which, I don't want to justify my doubt, but, historically speaking, they wrestled Van Cleve a couple weeks ago, and, I've been watching Lewisburg all season long, and I just thought, what I've witnessed with Van Cleve throughout the day, I was like, well, Van Cleve is looking like a well-oiled machine. Their kids are looking fluid. They're looking tough. I don't think Lewisburg looked like they're wrestling like their lives depended on it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And they were, man, and it paid off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the thing. I think, with me, because I was looking at the same thing, right? I've gotten a look at Lewisburg, a handful of times this season. I kind of knew what they were going to be bringing. But the thing that stood out to me in that finals was the fact that it was all hands on deck. Like, you could tell each wrestler went out there with their team in mind.
Yeah, man. I mean, what really impressed me, I mean, there's some key matchups that were really cool, that significant wins that Lewisburg had, but I really want to highlight the losses that Lewisburg suffered first, because again, as our sport is developing in this state, it's crucial to remind our athletes that team score matters. And nothing highlights this more than this Lewisburg Van Cleve duel. Unfortunately, Lewisburg has some developing wrestlers in their lighter weights that probably are just a little undersized, a little youthful. And so, they're kind of at a disadvantage at the gate. Like Jensen Hitt, 8th grader, 90 pounds. Spence Wigley's a little undersized for his 113 weight class. And then also, and that's where Van Cleve's the strongest, right, with the Allsop brothers and the Carroll brothers. And so taking, which I'm sorry to phrase it like this, but taking the strongest line of athletes against Lewisburg's weakest line of athletes and the outcomes that happened was I thought that was the most impressive thing.
Yeah.
Because listen, guys, and this is to all wrestlers everywhere. And again, I'm going to, Jensen Hitt, Spence Wigley, Gage Hitt. And then do you have the duel pulled up?
Yeah, I got it right.
Who was their 132 pounder? No, 138. Sorry, no, 126. My bad.
126. Angelo Max. I don't know.
Angelo, yeah, you too, buddy.
Yeah, that's the one that stood out to me.
Which I'll circle back to that here in a second. Listen, you can go out there against a guy you're outmatched with, and if you don't get pinned, that's a victory. And like I said, this is a highlight. Jensen almost got pinned a number of times. Gage Hitt almost got pinned a number of times. Angelo almost got pinned a number of times. But they fought their butts off. Spence on his back for most of the match, it seemed like. And they fought their butts off to not get pinned, to not give up that 6 points. And in fact, I think most of them were just majors.
Yeah.
What does it say on the?
Yeah, major, those two, and then Spence ended up getting pinned.
Oh well, it was towards the end of the period match, if I believe.
Yeah.
It happens. Same with the 215. Sherrod looked fantastic. And that kid fought his butt off to not get pinned, but hey, it happens. And he was keeping it close to like a regular decision, and then Sherrod kind of hit him with a nice little move and got the pin. But my point is that instead of giving up, giving up a major instead of a pin, like you saved your team from giving up, I think, about almost 6 points.
Well, just say those two matches, right? So your 126 with Angelo and your 132 with Gage Hitt. All right, both of them only gave up the major, which gave Van Cleve 4 points each instead of 6 points. Lewisburg won by 4 points.
Right. So
if you get pinned instead of giving up the major, boom, it's a tie.
And it goes to criteria.
Yeah.
And so, they played their part. Mm-hmm. And even though they lost, they were crucial components of that state title.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Now, of course, we got to give props to Parker for getting a pin. We got to give props to Paul for getting a pin.
I'm about to say, and your boy Paul Harvey.
Yeah,
he used that front headlock.
Which shout out to Paul Harvey, dude. This isn't, I call this constructive criticism. This isn't talking smack. This is constructive criticism. I've been saying, where's his offense? Where's his offense? Where's his offense? And if he didn't go out there and get that nice front headlock and snap that dude down to the mat, excellent mat awareness too, right on the edge. Like I said, it was a different Lewisburg team.
Yep.
I've been watching them all year, and that they looked different in that contest right there. And shout out to Paul, fantastic wrestling. Like I said, Parker, you did a good job getting that pin for your team.
And Logan Bradley selling the deal.
144, I didn't see that coming. And then the 150, Joey Fisher, good job, buddy. You really took it to Dougherty, I believe. And I know Dougherty. I was kind of, again, same with the Picayune boy. At 150, I was like, oh, this is Dougherty. His older brother's really talented. Well, gosh, what's this guy capable of doing? And he was looking really good all day. And Joey Fisher, he went out there and he beat him pretty decisively.
Yeah, he got a major over him.
And so, all those boys from the top, from 106 to heavyweight, you did exactly what you needed to do. Oh, and 190, again, I could shower all you guys with all these compliments. You guys wrestled the match of your lives. And you did what you needed to do, and some of you guys went above and beyond. Like 190, I don't think I certainly wasn't expecting a pin. Maybe I've watched McCray wrestle a lot, and he looks really good, but I wasn't expecting a pin, and he got it, and he was super hyped about it. I remember that. So it was really cool to see that, and then
you had Landon Traylor at 175 getting the pin,
and it's poetic that it came to Logan Bradley, who's been probably the guy at Lewisburg over the years, and he went out there and got the pin real quick, and gave a bow because I think he's bowing out of wrestling after this, and so what a huge moment. His senior year, it's down to him. He gets the pin. Lewisburg wins their first state title. The North gets its first state title, and like I said, it's a movie.
Yeah. Speaking of movie, like I swear when he got up and he like hit his flex or whatever, he looked just like the guy from Vision Quest. I swear he did. Like anybody watching it, go pull up Vision Quest, and then you go to our stream and pull up and like look at Logan Bradley when he stood up and did that. I'm telling you, it's the same guy.
And so, shout out to Coach Fisher. Shout out to Coach Gilbert. You guys. Same with the compliments that I give to Oxford. Clearly, you guys are consistent in your training, consistent in your expectations, and these kids are clearly run through a wall for you coaches, because they wrestled, like I said, like this was life or death, and like they wanted to bring that title. They were hungry for that, and so not all the teams in the North can say that. Now, like I said, you guys get your props. I gotta give Van Cleve some props. The Allsop brothers and the Carroll brothers, they look like. They look incredibly good. They had a really good on their feet, really good leg series. They impressed me a lot with their abilities, and of course, they're all four of them are champions. They've all of them have won state titles, and I can't remember which of the Carroll boys. I think it's Quentin. He's won state every time he's gone to the state tournament. So that would make, I think he's a sophomore this year, so I think he's a 3-time champion, en route to probably be the first 6-time state champion.
That'd be crazy.
So, they did as expected. They've always been kind of the names of Van Cleve, and, they showed why. And then Sherrod was very impressed. I'm not super happy because my own boys that are at 215, but objectively speaking, I'm glad to see Sherrod back up at 215. He cut down to 190 last year, wasn't looking quite as strong, wasn't looking quite as athletic. He went from a state title to 5th, 6th. Yeah. And then now he looks like his old self. He looks big, in shape, athletic, aggressive, and I don't think a single match was close on Saturday. And so he's looking really sharp too. And so the Van Cleve team looked very impressive, and I think, like I said, this is probably a Cinderella story. Before the podcast, I was saying that if this team ran it to like a 5-game series, I'd probably say Van Cleve would win it. But, they only had to wrestle once.
Right.
And Lewisburg showed up to wrestle, and they got it done.
Absolutely. And that's, kind of staying on that Van Cleve, that's kind of where, when you was like, all right, make an early prediction, and I picked Van Cleve, it's just, man, from what I saw all day in every duel, it's like, man, they had a slew of coaches, so you can tell that each wrestler's, getting the small group work and stuff that they need. Like, you could just see it, just like the way every single one of them went out there. They all had, solid technique. They all looked strong going out there competing. It just looked like it may be a little too much for like not any individual wrestler at Lewisburg, but the team as a whole of Lewisburg. And that's why I picked Van Cleve, to win it. But like you said, the way that Lewisburg went out there and wrestled with team first, like with that being the goal, it's like I think that's what really separated like yesterday's Lewisburg team from the rest of the Lewisburg teams that I'd watched all year long.
Right.
And that's where that, up in the ante and coming out there and wrestling hard, hey man, pay dividends. Now you have a new state champion, you know what I mean?
And again, I love to see it. I know, like I said, the South, they were a little chirpy these previous years, so it's really cool to see the North kind of get one.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And, hey, with that, I hate to cut this short. I know last time we were 2 hours. I don't know how long we've been going now, but, hey, I got a practice to run. I got some club kids that need to train. Hey, some of these kids were wrestling yesterday. They're right back into the room here at New Albany MMA Academy with Premier Wrestling to get their reps in because, hey, we got some future state champions in this room. And with that, I'll give it back to Tim, and maybe you'll have some guests here show up in a little bit. Thanks.
All right.
Hey, appreciate you, Tim.
Appreciate your time, brother. As always, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you like, follow, and let us know in the comments what you thought about it.